there, and welcome to the Transparently Jordan podcast, where I'll be talking with a new guest each week, and we'll be covering topics in health, fitness, lifestyle, and so much more. So stick around and let's get into today's episode.
Stress is one of the most underrated things that people look at for your gut health. And that is something that if you can control it and manage it through deep breathing, gentle exercises, movement, that's really going to support your gut health.
What is going on, everyone, and welcome back to a new episode. I am back this week after taking a nice week off of doing absolutely nothing. Last week was my very first week off. I am officially on Christmas break, and I decided to take the week completely off. So no podcasting, no nothing. I spent the week kind of exploring Adelaide, exploring and seeing things that I didn't get to see, hanging out with friends, and just kind of relaxing and chilling. So it was a much needed break, and I am very excited that I took it. But I'm going to be honest, I'm the type of person that needs to be doing something 24/7, and I am now at the point where I am just bored out of my mind. I have no schoolwork. I am not constantly, I constantly don't have something to do. So the days like today, for example, where I have absolutely nothing to do and I'm just kind of sitting around. I did chores today. I was very bored. I'm actually in the process of moving, which I'm slowly doing. I'm not moving until the beginning of January, but I am slowly trying to pack up and get things organized there. But for the most part, today, that's all I did. I just kind of sat around. I went to a store this morning to get the new Young Blood Weird album. And other than that, that's all I did. Went to JB High, I think it's called, got the album, and then came home and did absolutely nothing. So yeah, it's almost Christmas. I can't believe it is almost Christmas, you guys. It is coming up so fast, and Christmas this year is going to be a weird one. I know everybody in the entire world, Christmas is going to be completely new. It is going to be something I don't even know. I know back home in Canada, in Vancouver, for example, they're not even allowed to have Christmas. So Christmas is going to be every individual family in their own homes because you're not allowed to leave your home, which my family at Christmas time, everybody gets together, all of my uncles, aunts, all of my cousins, my grandparents. There's about 25-ish of us, 25 plus, I should say, now with everybody's significant others and whatnot. So there is a lot of us, and this is going to be the first year that is not going to happen. I mean, I'm here in Australia, of course, so I wasn't going to be there anyways, but here in South Australia even, it's going to be I'm having a small gathering with a few friends, and it's going to be my very first Australian Christmas, so that is going to be super new. I don't even know what to expect, to be honest. Yeah, because in Christmas, I think of snowman and I think of snow and all of that kind of stuff and green Christmas trees, whereas here in Australia there's no snow. People apparently spend the day on the beach and they have barbecues, and it's summer now, it's not winter like it is back in Canada. So it is going to be an interesting Christmas for me, to be honest. Completely new. I'm very excited to experience it, but yeah, it's new. After Christmas, I'm actually going to Melbourne. So I'm actually super excited because here in Adelaide is so small. I don't want to say it's small. It's not the most small, but it is very quiet. So things here, it was a shock to me. So when I first got here, first of all, things close at 5 p.m. Cafes, everything closes at 5 p.m. here. Restaurants are open a little bit later, of course, but even bars and stuff. I remember a couple days ago, it was one of my friend's birthdays, and it was a Wednesday, of course, but back in Vancouver on a Wednesday, you could easily find something that's open until maybe 2, 3 a.m. Whereas here, there was one bar that was open until midnight, and that's about it. And by the time we were thinking of leaving, it was like 10 p.m., and we were like, well, by the time we get there and all of that, it's going to be closed. So it ended up just being we stayed at this person's house. So that is all very new to me. Adelaide is very small in that sense, and it's very quiet and laid back, which I am not used to, and I am not sure that I 100% like. I really like the beach vibes, and I really like spending the day at the beach and the warm weather and all of that, but being a city boy and being someone who really likes the city and spending time in the city, there is not a whole lot to do in the city here. So I am super excited to head to Melbourne and spend some time in Melbourne. And I've just heard it's kind of funky and like hipster and things like that. And the coffee is supposed to be amazing. So I am so excited for that. I'm so excited for the nightlife. And I'm just hoping that, first of all, that I get there because as of now, I can travel there. But things are changing so rapidly. Who knows? By the time the time comes, it may change. And the one thing that I don't want to have to do is quarantine. As of now, I can go there and come back and not have to quarantine or self isolate. So hopefully that is still in effect when I leave. I'm leaving like January 1st. So fingers crossed. That's kind of like my New Year's plan. But yeah, that is really the updates with me. A lot, not maybe a lot has happened. Kind of a lot has happened in the last, I guess, 2 weeks since I've spoken to all you last. But this week's episode, let's get into this week's episode. This week's episode is a very interesting one. It is kind of like a continuation of one that I've done in the past. So, we are talking about IBS or irritable bowel syndrome. Irritable bowel syndrome. I said that right that time. I don't know what I said first, but we were talking about IBS and just kind of digesting it a little bit more and learning about it a little bit more with Liz Shaw. Now, Liz is someone who is very experienced in IBS and coaches and has a lot of clients who have IBS. So she works with various people and kind of helps them through their IBS journey and with their eating and activity and things like that. So I kind of discuss with Liz about what IBS is, about gut health, and about things like that. So I've done a gut health episode with Rosalind Kent a few episodes back, so definitely check that out if you want to go back there. But we are specifically looking into IBS here. So this is a very interesting episode and we get into quite depth. We get into IBS in quite depth, to be honest. So definitely stick around and let's get into today's episode. All right, everyone. Hello, and welcome to another episode. And I am sitting here with Liz. How are you, Liz?
I am good, thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, it is exciting. It's always exciting meeting new people, even though it's through Zoom, especially with COVID and all. I'd like to be face to face. I mean, you're the other side of the world, so it probably wouldn't have ever happened. But it's nice when it's a face to face episode. But that is all right. This is just as good. But Liz, do you mind maybe getting started today by just introducing yourself and telling us a little bit about you?
Absolutely. So, again, I'm Liz, and I am living in Halifax, Nova Scotia. So, definitely the opposite side of the world than where you are, Jordan. And I actually work full time as a management consultant in the privacy space. But health and wellness has just been such a huge part of my life. And that's why I started this side business, and it's named after myself. So, by Liz Shaw. And it's focused mostly on holistic health and IBS, as well as Ayurvedic wellness principles.
Okay, cool. Now, do you mind maybe speaking a little bit more about kind of your business and how it first became to be?
Absolutely. So I actually had an Instagram account that I started a couple years ago that started off as just for fun, just wanted to start a blog. And it was mostly to bring awareness to smaller people like me who has just always struggled to put on weight. And so that account was actually called The Strong Skinny, and that was the name of my blog as well. And then the more I engaged on there, the more I chatted with other people across the platform, I recognized that digestion was just a huge part of a lot of people's struggles with weight, and that was part of mine as well. So a couple of years ago, so probably about three or 4 years ago, I just lost a lot of weight suddenly, and I was already small to begin with. So now I was just like super tiny, and that just brought on a lot of unwarranted comments and conversations from people about what you should and should not eat. And so then that's where I just really started to recognize that IBS is so prevalent everywhere. And the way that we're navigating through the healthcare system, at least through in here in Canada, uh, a lot of people just weren't getting the care they needed in a timely manner. And that's where I just really started to recognize, what can I do? What can I do myself to take care of my health? What can I do to alleviate these IBS symptoms? And I realized it was more of a holistic approach to digestion than what we were getting offered. So that's where my business really took off. And that's where I decided I want to start putting out content out there and a program that really brings this holistic approach to healing your digestion.
Yeah. And I think that's very interesting because I think IBS is something that, I mean, I've heard of before, but I haven't ever really truly understood what it was. And I still am a little bit confused on what it is. I did an episode a few months ago, I think it was now, about gut health, and IBS came about. And it is something that is super interesting. And I think a lot of people maybe experiencing symptoms or maybe experiencing IBS but don't even know, and it goes kind of undiagnosed because they haven't gone out and seek the right help or they don't know what to do. So that's why I kind of really wanted to do this episode and speak to you, because I think it's such an interesting topic. And again, I think people are just kind of experiencing it and going about their days and not really know what's going on. So do you mind maybe getting into and speaking a little bit just what IBS in general is?
Absolutely. So the thing with IBS is there is no real test for it.
Mm,
So IBS is so irritable bowel syndrome, and that's just like the general diagnosis they give you when they can't actually figure out what's wrong.
right.
So they can test you to see if you have celiacs or if you have Crohn's disease, but there is no real test to say, hey, you definitively have IBS. We just know that you're having all of these digestive symptoms, and there is no clear solution on how to manage that. So it's kind of like a blanket diagnosis, and it's a frustrating diagnosis because with
Hmm.
celiacs or Crohn's, you can easily control that, or there's medications for it because they know how to control those diseases. But with IBS, it's kind of like, well, some people get constipation, some people get diarrhea, there's different solutions for that, and we don't know the answer. And that's after, so I got numerous tests done. Like I had the colonoscopy, I did swallow tests, I did all of these different tests, and it was, well, all of these came back clear, but you're
Right.
still experiencing these symptoms, so we're just going to give you this IBS diagnosis. And so where I waited 2.5 years to see a GI specialist, go through months and months of tests and waiting and referrals to get this frustrating diagnosis was a lot to deal with. And there's so many people out there that are also dealing with this. And so that's the thing with IBS. You don't need a clear and cut diagnosis to tell you that you're dealing with these symptoms. You know that you have it. And I think as well with IBS is you're not just it's not just like the diarrhea and the constipation. So a lot of people associate those two and heartburn with IBS,
Mm,
but it could also be your skin is really, really dry, or you're getting acne, or you're getting really dry scalp and really dry hair. So or you're extremely tired all the time. Like
mm.
or you're bloated all the time. There's so many different factors that people don't consider associated with their digestion. And that's part of the reason why I started to divert my business towards sharing content related to IBS, because there's like all this unknown about what it actually is.
Right. And that seems like it's a common, I guess, a common point with IBS that when people are trying to figure it out, because there's all of these symptoms and because it can be anything, it seems to be kind of a long journey. And I know you were just saying that it took about 2 years, I think, for you to get that frustrating diagnosis. And I know people I've talked with have said it's taken 5 or 6 years and they still kind of haven't gotten that diagnosis by then. So is that something that you hear of? Is it commonly kind of a longer period of time that people are experiencing these things and are kind of having appointment after appointment? Or is it something that people kind of find a little bit more shorter term?
Yeah, so absolutely. So the way I would describe IBS is kind of like an iceberg. So you only usually see what's above the surface, not what's below. So you
Mm,
people usually are waiting years and years and years where they're experiencing all these symptoms and they kind of blame it on other things. Like I know when I was first going through it, I was like, "Oh, I just got really bad heartburn from eating that takeout. It must be because I'm getting older. Like my dad has Tums all the time, so like this must be normal. It just comes with age." So a lot of people just like blame those little one offs until it gets to the point where it just like overflows and now you're experiencing it all the time. So it's usually a longer journey and people just don't realize it because they're blaming it on other things and just kind of like shoving it under the rug thinking that it's fine. So
right.
it's usually a longer journey, but they don't really realize it until it's happening. And then after that, now they're trying to backtrack and find a solution. But that's also taking years of time. So it's definitely a very long and drawn out journey. And that's what makes it harder to try to pinpoint what's causing it.
Right, right. And are there any things, I mean, I know it's IBS, of course, is a general thing, and there's probably a lot of things, but is there any things that can affect IBS, or any common things, I guess, that people kind of note that I guess practitioners maybe look for when they make the diagnosis of IBS?
Absolutely. There's a lot of general food triggers.
Right.
So the
Okay.
dairy, the gluten, eggs, soy, those are the main things that people are told to cut out of their diet. And there's like various approaches you could take. There's the low FODMAP diet, or there's an elimination diet, or there's
Mm,
a modified elimination diet. And typically with those, you're cutting out those main things on top of like nightshade vegetables, as well as like garlic, onions, and
mm,
spicy foods. So the main thing across all of them is definitely spicy foods or things that are made with like peppers or tomatoes, like acidic foods. So those are things that you typically avoid because it can trigger inflammation in your gut. And then it can also trigger heartburn. So that's why you like, when you eat spicy food, you're like, oh my gosh, I have really bad heartburn.
yeah.
And people with IBS, that'll just trigger it right away. So they're usually told to avoid those things.
Okay. And how long, like these symptoms, is it kind of a generalized, like, do they last maybe a day? Do they last weeks? Or how long do symptoms last? Or is it kind of, I guess, dependent on the person?
It's dependent on the person and it's also dependent on how much you eat. And
Mm,
the thing with IBS and why it's very common to get told to track your foods in a food journal is because you might think you can eat tomatoes one day and you're fine, and then you eat it again the next day and then you're fine, then you eat it a third day, then all of a sudden you have extremely bad heartburn, you can't sleep at night, you can't breathe because the heartburn's so bad. And that's because you're not only just looking at that one food, you're also looking, well, what other factors were contributing to that day? Was it because you ate a lot of dairy and gluten, or like whatever other food triggers you have? So that's why it's really important to keep a food journal, because that's going to determine how you respond to whatever food item you ate and what other factors are contributing to those symptoms that you're experiencing. So it's really hard to tell if you think that you're fine eating that same food day after day, then all of a sudden you get a response to it. It's typically because it's other foods that you ate that same day that also triggered a response. So that's why, unless you keep a food journal, you're just going to be playing this guessing game, trying to figure out what was it that caused that digestive flare.
right. Okay. And when people are food journaling, because I think that's a super interesting concept and an important one, can you maybe do the rundown of what exactly food journaling is, how long people maybe should be doing it for?
Yep. Absolutely. So with food journaling, so I actually I launched a digestive wellness course called the Wellness Architecture, and in that program I cover food journaling, but I actually do it a different way that most people do it and the way that's
Mm.
been recommended, and I
Okay.
just think it's a bit more intuitive. But the way that they typically do it is just keep a journal of what you ate all day. So for breakfast, lunch, dinner, snacks, anything, any sort of liquids that you had that day, and you're
Mm.
just tracking it like every single day where you're writing out what did I eat. Some might ask you how much of it you ate, like just like I said, you might be fine eating tomatoes 3 days in a row, then all of a sudden it causes a flare. So it's
Right.
really just laying out what you ate and how much of it you ate, and just really, yeah, tracking it day to day on what you ate. And they might typically do it for a 3 day journal, sometimes a 5 day journal or a 7 day journal, just to really get a snapshot of what you're eating and if there's any obvious food triggers. Because there's some people who might not eat a healthy diet, right? And they might
Yeah.
have high processed foods or high processed sugars. So in those, it's really easy to pinpoint what might be causing it. But for some people, it's very hard to tell. And that's where having at least 5 days to 7 days of data will be able to help you identify what those foods might be.
Right. Okay. Now, I mean, when you're talking about IBS, I know we were saying, or you were saying, sorry, it's kind of a broader thing that people kind of often get a diagnosis when doctors don't know what else is going on. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. So essentially, does that mean that IBS is kind of like a broader term for other intolerances? So I'm just kind of thinking of like a gluten intolerance, for example. Does that fall under IBS, or is that kind of its own thing?
So with that, it would be celiac disease,
Right.
but so it could be anything. So with food intolerances though,
Yeah.
like you could have eggs, or like those would typically be called food allergies.
Mm,
So, and then you'd be able to tell if you cut those out of your diet and you're fine with everything else. Because
right.
usually with food allergies, people might only be allergic to like one or two foods. I mean, if they're like someone who's allergic to peanut butter, right?
Yeah.
And that would be considered a food allergy, not IBS. With
Hmm.
IBS, it's more so you can't just control it with your diet. You're trying to control it with your diet, or you're trying to control it with medications. Sometimes
Mm,
there's medications that can help with motility and just getting things moving through your digestive tract.
right.
But that doesn't work for everybody. And if people are alternating between constipation, heartburn, diarrhea, you can't just be popping all these different pills because they're all controlling different things. Like if I'm taking pills to control my constipation, but I also have diarrhea, now I need to try to find medications to help me with my diarrhea. Like it's just, you're just going to
Yeah.
be alternating between the two. So it's easier if someone has one type of it, so like IBSD, where they like just have diarrhea, then
Hmm.
it's easier to control and manage that through diet and certain medications. But that's, most people aren't as lucky with those types of diagnosis.
Right. Okay. And I think that's super interesting. One of the points that you just made is, people are needing to maybe take all of these medications. But I think the problem with that also is taking all of these medications probably puts a lot more stress on your digestive system and your gut health, which probably doesn't help the IBS. So maybe can you speak to a little bit about um, gut health, maybe, and how important it is to kind of work on your gut to kind of combat the IBS?
Absolutely. Gut health is something I'm so passionate about. And I've just like recognized that there's so many different things that influence your gut health aside from just your nutrition. And so that's why in my content, at least, I'm very looking at how can you have a holistic approach to healing your gut health. So stress is one of the most like underrated things that people look at for your gut health.
Mm,
And that is something that if you can control it and manage it through like deep breathing, gentle exercises, movement, that's really going to support your gut health. And mindfulness and stress reduction and breathing exercises, that's going to support your gut health. And obviously, nutrition is a huge component of your gut health. Like, are you having probiotics? Are you having prebiotics? What are you doing to support your gut health long term? And that includes eating enough fiber, drinking enough water, which are the standard things that are recommended by dietitians when they're looking at your IBS. But I think it needs to go a lot broader and looking at other things like environmental factors and getting enough sleep and exercising well. So all of those different things can contribute to your gut health aside from your nutrition, but nutrition is definitely the more like popular areas of focus when it comes to your gut health.
Right. Yes. And like, I think nutrition with everything, like with trying to gain weight, with trying to lose weight. I mean, for me being an athlete, being an athlete, nutrition is important. Like nutrition is important just in general. So I think that's super important. Then people often, I think, try and get around nutrition in a sense, some ways by getting or trying to find little tips and tricks or trying to, I guess, feed around the bush, but I think it all comes back to nutrition and your gut health at the end of the day. But one point at the beginning that I wanted to, I kind of want to break all of that up because those were super awesome points. But one thing that you started with was kind of stress and all of that kind of stuff. And I know if you have IBS, I would assume it's probably going to increase your stress levels, like you don't you may not want to go out to a party because you're experiencing symptoms, or you may not want to do this or that. So what are some ways, I know you mentioned a few things, but what are some ways people can try and help, I guess, their stress levels or, help their stress levels, I guess, to try and combat IBS and their gut health?
Absolutely. So one of the points you just made, just like you're stressed, you don't want to go out. Like you don't know
Yeah.
how your body's going to react if you go to a restaurant or you're having drinks with friends. And so it's definitely this vicious cycle of, yeah, I want to go out. Yeah, I want to hang out. And oh my God, now I'm dealing with stress. Now I have to run to the bathroom. And it's just like this, like, it's really hard on your mental health.
Mm-hmm.
So with stress reduction and especially related to IBS and your digestion, one of the biggest things that you can do to reduce stress is actually having a really strong daily routine. So, having a morning ritual, having a nighttime ritual, and actually sticking to it is so important for your digestive health and your gut health and your stress levels, because your body likes to have some sort of stability and continuity, and they like to know that there's some sort of routine and schedule. So you might notice that you go to the bathroom at the same time every day. Like some people always, pass the bowel movement first thing in the morning or in the middle of the day or after their morning coffee, like whatever it is. And that's because there's a routine and structure in your body
Yeah.
and it likes that. So having a morning routine and a nighttime routine will just create some structure in your life, and that'll actually help reduce a lot of stress as well. So those are two things I really highlight, is having a strong morning and nighttime ritual.
Right. And what are a few things, because I like details. I'm a
Yeah, no, of
detail-oriented
course.
person. What are a few things maybe that you recommend? Maybe just general things, because I know again, individualized people like everybody probably needs different things, but what are some maybe general things that you recommend people maybe start to try and incorporate into their morning and night routines?
Yeah, so morning definitely, just to get things moving, is lemon water first thing in the morning. Your body's dehydrated after sleeping all night, and the lemon juice and the acidity will just help to kind of kickstart your digestion. So that's something I recommend in the morning, and then as well as meditation, both in the morning and in the evening. So even if that's 5 minutes or 10 minutes, I know some questions I had from clients was, well, I have kids or I have a dog. Like, I don't know where I'm going to fit in meditation. And I think the concept of meditation needs to change, because a lot of people think that means being zen, sitting on a comfy pillow with like music and a candle. And meditation can be like mindful and walking for 10 minutes and not distracted, and just being present with like feeling your feet walk on the ground and breathing in fresh air and just really focusing on your breath as you're walking your dog. Like those are things that are still meditation, because it's calming on the mind and it's forcing you to be grounded. And so if you think you don't have time to meditate for 5 or 10 minutes in the morning, you probably do. You just need to switch your concept of what you think meditation is. So I think just really dedicating 5 to 10 minutes of time to yourself. And there's so many like free guided meditations on YouTube that you could find and plug in, or on Spotify. So just depending on what you have access to. So even if you don't have that, a guided meditation, just focusing on your breath is really important. So meditation and the lemon water in the morning, and then also just trying to find time to journal. A lot of people are just constantly go, 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 and don't give enough time to rest their mind or even get those thoughts out of their mind and onto paper. And so just having some journaling cues, you can find those online easily too, is a good way to kind of either start your day or end your day, depending on how much time you have. And yeah, those are probably the main ones that I'd say. And definitely just deep breathing. So even if you're not meditating, just getting your body into that rest and digest phase by taking 5 deep belly breaths is a good way to just calm your body down.
Yeah. And I really liked one of the points that you made, that especially on the meditation, people thinking that they have to kind of redo this meditation and they kind of have to spend all of this time on meditation. But like you said, there's so many guides out there. I have like it's called Smiling Minds. It's like an app, and you can do 5-minute meditations. You can do 10. And I do like every single morning, and it's free. It's awesome. And you can do everything. Like, you can go for walks and do it. You can sit in your bed and do it. Like, it doesn't have to be hard. And I think just kind of remembering that it doesn't have to be hard is super important. So I really like that point there. Um, what about nutrition? So nutrition is such an important concept. It is something that I think everybody is super important or super interested in. People like to try all of these diets and try all of these new things to try and, I guess, jumpstart or get ahead with nutrition and with changing and all of that. But what are some things nutrition wise that you recommend to try and help combat IBS or people with
Yeah.
symptoms?
Yeah, so nutrition, as you said, it can be very personalized depending on who the person is or, what sort of digestive issues that they're dealing with. And personally, I've been really exploring and leaning into Ayurvedic health principles. And they talk like, as of late, at least in the past like 5 years, having green smoothies or green juice has been really popular among like the health trends. And with your digestion, usually with IBS, your entire digestive tract is inflamed. Like, it's just, even if you're not sensitive to that food, you're all of a sudden reacting to it because your body's under a lot of stress and a lot of inflammation, and cold foods can be stressful on your digestion. And so as much as possible, and especially in the Ayurveda world, we're really focusing on warming foods and warming spices just to have it be easy on your digestive tract. So a lot of raw vegetables and smoothies can be really hard on people's digestion just because there's like so much fiber. And so just eating the food cooked as much as possible can make a world of difference in how you experience your symptoms. Like, you might still have some bloating or some constipation or some diarrhea, but it's not going to be as aggressive. So trying to cook as much of your foods as possible is really nice and calming on your digestive tract. So I know a lot of people are like, oh, I can't get rid of my vegetables. Like, I love to eat vegetables. And there's so many different ways you can play with it. Like, even if it's steamed vegetables or sauteed or roasted, like, you can get really creative with it. And like anything, your body will just get used to it.
Right. And the body's an interesting thing. It adapts super quickly. So yeah, that's awesome. But what about supplements? I'm super interested in supplements, and I think people are always interested in supplements. Are there any, in your experience with, I guess, the clients that you see, are there any supplements that people ask you about routinely or try and I maybe incorporate into their diets? Is there anything that you recommend to them or that you tell them that they need to be kind of wary of or watch for?
Yeah, so that's something that's also personalized. And without seeing like a naturopath or a doctor, I think some people are just blindly taking supplements because they think they need to. But the two that have made a world of difference among people in the IBS world, the first one is L-glutamine. And that's just really helping heal the the digestive tract. So if there's, with leaky gut, there's all these tiny little holes in your gut, and L-glutamine can just really help repair the gut lining. And magnesium is another one. That's something that can, it helps relax the body. So that's something that I like to take in the evening before bed. But then it also has another purpose where it can also help get things moving through your digestive tract if you do have, if you're experiencing constipation. So L-glutamine and magnesium are the two. There's a bunch of other ones like, the B complex and vitamin C and echinacea. There's just so many different supplements you can take for overall wellness health, but related to digestion, the L-glutamine and the magnesium.
Right. Okay. And is that something that people can just get, in the grocery store, or is it something that they need to be getting at their doctors or at their naturopath? Like, is it a supplement that needs to be like super expensive, or is it something that you can order on Amazon?
It's definitely something you can order online, but it's also trying to be wary of the quality that you're going to be getting. I know we tend to go to a lot of the cheaper things just because it's available in our local drugstore, but a lot of those supplements are filled with fillers and you're not really getting the full benefit of the supplement. So if you're going to, and magnesium, so for both the L-glutamine and the magnesium, they usually come in like huge jars, but you're getting like you're using a tiny little scoop. So it might seem like you're spending like $50. Well, now I don't even know Canadian, $50
Right.
Canadian, but it's a tiny little scoop and it'll last you months. Like I think it ends up being like a half a teaspoon, maybe. Like it's not a huge quantity daily. If you take too much of it, you're going to be like running for the bathroom. So it might seem like a lot, but try to opt for quality supplements and then it'll last you a while too.
Yeah, I like that, quality over, yeah, quantity and price. I think that's super important. I I'm interested in probiotics. I know probiotics are something that I mean, maybe it's always been big. I've just never really kind of tuned into it, but I know in the last like maybe 5 years, everybody I know seems to be probiotic this, probiotic that, and taking foods that have high probiotics and taking a probiotic supplement. But how do probiotics work with IBS and with your gut health? And should people be kind of eating more foods that have probiotics in it, or be taking a probiotic supplement?
I don't even know how I didn't even say probiotics. You're
Yeah.
totally right. So definitely, I think I was like thinking of other ones
Yeah,
outside of
yeah, yeah.
probiotics, but
Because people
probiotics is, yeah, go ahead.
people don't people don't think of it as a supplement all the time, I think, because
That's why, yeah.
yeah, because like again, it's becoming such its own thing now. I think like even I don't really think of it as a supplement. I just think of it as like, oh, it's this health thing, and it has its benefits, but yeah, it's a super interesting concept.
Yeah, so probiotics, so there's actually one that I take here, and I don't know if it's available outside of Canada. It's called cultured coconut, and it is a coconut kefir, and it tastes like it's kind of like has a very like sulfuric smell, but you take like a tablespoon of it a day. And with probiotics, it's tricky with people with IBS because you hear that probiotics are awesome and you try to eat more of it like in kombucha and other things like that, but what happens is if you don't know what type of issues you're having with your gut, like if you have SIBO, which is small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, and all of a sudden you're adding in probiotics to it, your stomach might just go wild and it might just be like, oh my gosh, there's all these extra bacteria. Even if it's healthy bacteria, it's just causing it to expand by like the millions. And all of a sudden you're dealing with excessive bloating and pain. So with IBS, you want to take probiotics in very, very small doses and just kind of test the waters, see how your body feels, and then try to move it up a bit. And you could get that from just naturally eating foods, but you can get it like in yogurts and whatnot. But trying to supplement with it right away might be tricky unless you try to calm the inflammation down ahead of time through minimizing those typical food triggers.
Right. Okay. Yeah, there's a brand in Vancouver that I used to get. I think it was called Yogu. Um, I don't remember what it was called, but it was a Vancouver brand. And I think it was exactly the same or similar to what you just mentioned. I think it was coconut based. Um, and yeah, I just had a tablespoon every morning in my oatmeal, and I think it worked wonders. But um, I am wondering about prebiotics. Is that what it's called?
There's,
Prebi?
yeah,
Okay,
there's, yeah,
what is the
prebiotic.
difference? What is the difference between that? I've never taken that, and I don't really know much about any of it really. But what is a prebiotic, and is that something that people should be taking as well?
Yeah, so you can get prebiotics. You're probably already having it. Like you can get it mostly from different types of carbs and fiber. So you're naturally eating it, and that's where you want to get your probiotics and prebiotics from anyways. And I haven't personally supplemented with prebiotics. I just naturally eat food. So like in bananas and other types of foods, you're getting those prebiotics. So unless you're unless it's been recommended through your doctor or your physician, I've just been trying to get as many of those live cultures from as much of the food that I eat. And I think that's the best that you can do for your body. Otherwise, you're kind of scrambling to take all these different supplements. And with prebiotics and probiotics or any types of supplements, it could also be that you're taking it with the wrong foods or you're mixing it with the wrong thing. And that's where you just have to be careful. But foods that are really high in prebiotics are like bananas and berries, um, like asparagus. Can't even remember them all off the top of my head. A lot of legumes and beans also have a lot of prebiotics. So those are the foods that people naturally eat and include in their diet, and they're actually high in prebiotics.
Right. Okay. Now I'm interested in getting your opinion on where people should go. So if they're experiencing these symptoms and they're not knowing what's going on, what maybe kind of practitioner should people see? Because I think sometimes, I mean, my family doctor, for example, is amazing. Like she will say right off the bat, oh, actually, I think you should maybe go and see a naturopathic doctor for this because in medicine, we don't get trained by this, and I can give you a whole bunch of pills, but those aren't probably going to be doing any better. But not a lot of general practitioners do that. So, are there any healthcare practitioners that you recommend people going and seeing for, I guess, if they're having these symptoms and things? Is it a general practitioner? Is it a holistic nutritionist? Is it a naturopath? Is there anybody that you recommend?
So depending on what you're looking for or what you think you're experiencing, because I would hate to tell someone go to a dietitian or go to a holistic nutritionist and it was actually their appendix was ruptured. So the
Right.
problem with your
Mm-hmm.
digestion and your gut and your abdomen is just there's so many different things going on. So I don't think there's anything wrong with going to your family doctor first just to see, is there something that needs immediate attention? But if it's kind of just silent sort of triggers, like you're just getting some cramping here and there when you eat certain foods and you notice that, or you're getting heartburn, then maybe go see a dietitian or a holistic nutritionist just to see, how can I control this with my diet? And then maybe if that's not working for you, exploring other options. So going to a naturopath and seeing if you need to get some blood work done to identify if it's your hormones that are also playing a part. So just really trying to, and that's the thing with IBS, is you're kind of just playing around to see what works for you and what doesn't. And your digestion can actually control a lot of it. So I think that's where holistic nutritionists and dietitians play a huge part, because they can give you advice on suggestions on what you should be eating or could try eating to help control your diet. And then again, yeah, if that's not working, really just going out and exploring other options, like getting some blood work done through your family doctor or your naturopath to see if there's something else that's happening.
Right. Okay. And do you mind maybe speaking, going back into your business and speaking into essentially how you can help people and what you do with your clients and what clients kind of seek you for?
Yeah. So the wellness architecture is a course that I created specifically related to gut health.
Okay.
And there's three main pillars. So restore is one of the pillars, and that's focused on nutrition. So how can you restore whole foods and healthy foods back into your diet? And the next pillar is looking at mindfulness, and that's the activate pillar. So, how can you include mindfulness and stress reduction and journaling and healthy habits into your diet? And then the final pillar is move, and that's looking specifically at movement, but looking at only low impact movement. So those are the three pillars that we look at specifically: is movement, nourishment, and mindfulness. And with movement, a lot, like at least here in North America, spin classes and HIIT exercises are trending. Like those are the types of workouts people are gravitating towards. But with digestion, that's just adding a lot more stress on your body. So that's why I specifically look at low impact movement, at least throughout my 8-week program, because we're really just trying to calm your entire body down. And so walking, yoga, bar, Pilates, those are gentle movements that you can do that still lengthen and tone and strengthen your body without putting aggravated stress on your entire body, like spin classes and HIIT exercises might do. So I don't think there's anything wrong with those types of exercises, but when you're actively trying to reduce inflammation in the body, I really encourage low impact movement. So those are the three things that I look at, and I essentially preach on my social media: is what can you do to help your digestion by taking this holistic approach?
Right. Okay. And with movement, so you're saying kind of walking and those kind of low impact exercises. How long should people do it? I know you were saying maybe for the 8 weeks that you're seeing them, but if they're, let's say, if they're seeing benefits from doing those low impact things, are people able to maybe slowly incorporate those maybe higher impact, like those spin classes, back into it? Or is it something that people should maybe stay away from altogether?
I think any type of movement is good for your body, especially with everybody working from home now, or, just in general, working desk jobs. Movement in general is just good for your digestion, just because it's getting things moving through your digestive tract. But it's also just playing around and seeing how your body feels. Because if you really, really love high impact exercises and spin classes, go ahead and do it. But just wait to see how your body feels as you start to minimize those digestive symptoms that you're experiencing. So if you're doing the program and you're doing low impact exercises for 30 minutes a day for 6 days a week, maybe you want to replace that with one HIIT exercise or one spin class, and then slowly start tapering it up, just to see how your body feels. But I would never want someone to stop doing something that they love, because then they're just going to fall off the bandwagon and get back and do the same thing again. So just really trying to taper that in as much as possible.
Yeah. And I really like what one thing that you just brought up that I didn't even think of, but more and more people nowadays, because of, where the world is at, are staying home and are a lot more sedentary. So, how is that? Or are you seeing anybody coming to you, in the last, I guess, 6 to 9 months, coming to you because they're experiencing new symptoms, being at home all of the time and being more inactive?
100% yes. And it's not even just being inactive, it's also all of a sudden being in this pandemic and stressed because you don't know what's coming, you don't know what's happening. You hear about a vaccine, you're frustrated because your neighbor's not wearing a mask. Like there's so many of these underlying stressors that are happening. And now all of a sudden you don't get to see your family. You're locked in your home. You decide that you only want to eat takeout all the time. So a lot of people that messaged me in later this summer in Canada was that they felt like their symptoms came out of nowhere. They didn't think they had digestive issues and it came out of nowhere. And it's like, okay, well, have you looked at journaling? Have you looked at stress reduction? Have you gone on a walk around your neighborhood for 30 minutes just to get out of the house? So those are all things. And all of a sudden fall hit and they're like, oh yeah, my symptoms have actually started to go away, or I actually haven't noticed it as much, or I only get heartburn every once in a while now when I eat spicy foods. So that's nice, where they're recognizing like, wow, my body and my stress and everything else I'm doing contributes to my gut health. And it's not just all of a sudden I'm eating a lot more junk food or I'm staying at home. So those are things that we don't exactly factor in. And then all of a sudden, now you get into a habit of, wow, takeout was actually really easy. So I'm just going to keep eating more takeout, or I'm actually doing my part and I'm supporting small businesses and I'm eating takeout. It's like, but what is your real motivator here? So I think it's just really trying to step back and assess why you're doing that is probably the hardest thing.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that, and then that definitely comes into play with all the things you mentioned throughout the episode, and kind of, I guess, coming to routine to kind of combat all that, and getting your morning routine, getting your motivation, doing meditation, all of that to try and help all of those symptoms. So that was super interesting point. And I think, yeah, that's just a thing that I'm sure everybody around the world, even here, I mean, people in South Australia, we're actually okay right now. We're COVID free, but people are probably still stressed because there's always, I guess, the possibility of it coming back, and even other stresses of it being Christmas now and all of that. So I think that's a super interesting thing. And that's something that, people being at home all the time and not, I guess, not really focusing maybe as much on themselves because of the stress and because of everything that they're going through is probably hindering a lot of people. So I'm interested now in maybe hearing a little bit more about where people can sign up to work with you. Do you have a website? Do you want to plug in social media, anything like that?
Yeah, so my social media and email, everything, I try to keep it as consistent as possible. So it's by Liz Shaw, so BYLIZZ, however you pronounce it, SHAW, and that's on Instagram, that's on Facebook, that's my email, so bylizshaw@gmail.com. And it is also my website, so www.bylizshaw.com.
Okay, awesome. And that will be in the show notes below, everybody, so you can check all of that out. But I thank you so much, Liz, for being on the episode. Again, I just thought IBS was such an interesting topic, and gut health is so interesting. So I'm so glad that you were here today speaking to it all and kind of offering some tips and tricks to everybody. I think this was all very informative, and I really, really liked the information.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I hope it was helpful.
All right, everyone, that is it for today's episode. Now, once again, be sure to check out all of Liz's links in the show notes below. You can check out her Instagram, her website, and all of the things that she has available for free on both her website and her Instagram. Thank you all for listening to this week's episode, and have a good Christmas. It is Christmas, I believe. Yeah, Christmas Friday, so won't talk to you before that. So have a good Christmas, everybody, and I will talk to you all next week.